We're live.
We're live. Look at that. Hi,
We
Anna.
we are. Hello, Michael. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday
Everyone else,
indeed. I have my coffee.
thank you. Good for you. I had my coffee 5 hours ago, so I forgot all about it. I need to be caffeinated again. To everyone else who just joined us live, apologies for a slight delay,
My
and
fault.
we're welcoming you to our conversation with Michael. It will be super exciting. So thanks everyone for joining. Can you please drop an emoji or say hi in the comment section because we can't see you.
That's right.
Michael, welcome to
Thank you.
Spotlight Fridays.
I'm
I'm
not.
so excited to have you.
I'm actually gonna say it was my fault that I'm late, but I got to say that the user interface on the screen to join was not very obvious. That there's this little tiny text at the bottom that says "continue without," which is an interesting customer experience point of view. It's it really highlights that when you're building a product or when you're creating something for people to purchase, that you should test your like the obviously it's not your streaming platform, that there's a company that builds this, but having that experience as an end user is so valuable for any small business and medium business and anyone that wants to grow. Test your own flows, test your own business processes. It's really quite interesting because I was sitting there for 3 minutes not realizing that I should click this link. It's anyway, it's interesting. I just thought I'd totally derail the
Like feedback.
conversation right at the start.
I'll let Restream know that. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear this feedback. This is hilarious. But you're such a CX person, but you're also the founder and the CEO of Store Connect, everyone. And you're on the mission to help small to medium sized businesses simplify their systems and streamline their operations and unlock their growth in the process.
Absolutely.
So let's just talk about Store Connect. Why did you decide to launch it, start it? Are read it somewhere that you won Salesforce Innovation Award for it as well. Oh, you do have it. Look at
There we
you.
go.
The
Look at that.
trophy's coming out.
The trophies are coming
Fancy.
out. And we won a couple of demo jams as well, which is pretty cool. This is probably the one I'm most proud of, to be honest. You obviously can't read that on the camera, but this is our Salesforce Partner Innovation Award for customer service or customer success. So, it's good when you get recognized for something that you're really trying to look after, which is your end customers. But why the hell did I build Store Connect? And look, about 8 years ago now, I realized that I was running a software development agency. I still have it, Reinteractive. It's quite successful. We build mobile and web-based apps that are connected to Salesforce. And I kept having customers come to me and going, "Can you build us an e-commerce platform?" And I'm like, I mean, yes, I'll take you $500,000 to build that, but why aren't you using Shopify? And because in my mind, e-commerce was a completely solved problem. You want a thing, you go to the website, you buy the thing, you're done. What came out of me constantly asking why, like, why do you want to spend a lot of money to build this bespoke, was the front end's not the problem. The problem they were having was the back end. And what I mean by that is platforms like BigCommerce, Shopify, WooCommerce, all of these, they're fantastic at e-commerce. Wix, Squarespace, all of these. They're really good at selling a product online. But as a business owner, small or large, you need to change your business operation to fit in with the way that they go about doing business. So you need to change the way you store your data, and you need to change what fields you pick and all this sort of stuff. It restricts your back end business process to fit in with the front end view. And I thought that was a bit tail wagging the dog. It was like, well, why are we changing our business model to fit with the software platform? Shouldn't it be the other way around? And that's where I came up with Store Connect in terms of building an e-commerce and point of sale system and a content management system completely on top of Salesforce. And Salesforce has got a lot of things going for it, and it is, not the cheapest thing out there. But the reason for that is it's almost infinitely customizable, and you can completely set up Salesforce the way you want it to be, and then Store Connect can run out of that. And that's really how we got to where we are now. And 7 or 8 years later, we're now expanding at insane speeds. I think we're at 125% year-on-year growth. We're doubling our bookings every quarter for the last 3 quarters. It really is just taking off. And I think we've really hit a nerve on producing a scalable solution. And while we did start with small to medium business, we're definitely hitting massive clients now. Like we just signed up a company that does $500 million worth of sales a year, every year in Australia. So, it's really solving this problem. Complex commerce is what we're solving.
Isn't that amazing? Just by continuously asking a question, why, and identifying the problem and building the solution for that problem, what it can create.
100%. I do this very often. I think it's one of the hidden secrets to my success. It's not really a secret. I've spoken about it on my own podcast and many others. But as a CEO and founder, the number one thing that you can do is call your customers. Just your existing customers. I'm not talking about prospects. Get the ones that you haven't spoken to in 6 months or a year or 2 years and just get them on the phone. I spoke to a customer 2 weeks, 3 weeks ago, and they said to me, in my 20 years of working in software, like being responsible for buying SaaS software, you are the first CEO of a SaaS company that's called me to ask me how I'm doing. And I went, what? Like, I thought everyone did this. But it's a really talk to your customers. You find out so much stuff. It's really awesome. And you find out,
People tell you.
yeah, they tell you all sorts of things. And they're willing to talk to you,
Absolutely. Because no one else asking the questions.
No one else is asking the questions. And one of my favorite questions to ask, I mean, I ask a whole bunch of questions, but right at the end, I always ask, if there was one thing, if you had a magic wand and there was one thing that you could just fix with my product, what would it be? And the answers you get out of that are fantastic. They're like open the door to revenue, basically, because it's a real world problem. It's not something that you've made up as a CEO, or worse, is just something that some prospect told you that they want, but there's no real business case behind it, and you're going to go develop all this time and money on it. But get it from your customers. Give them a call. It's so useful.
This is my biggest highlight already, and we're only 10 minutes into it. Ask your customers. This is brilliant. I'm going to write a blog about this. So let's just go to the points that we promised that we'll cover in these conversations, because I know you are super intellectual, you're super smart. We've had many conversations. I had you in my ear for hours because I binged on your podcast. Everyone, take note. Highly recommend you to check it out. It's called the
Customer Commerce.
again, sorry.
Customer Commerce Podcast.
The Customer Commerce Podcast. Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, so let's go to promise number one that we will be covering today: how to unify sales, marketing, and support teams. What is your advice?
Oh, talk to your customers. No, I think, that the first thing that you have to do to achieve that, and this, not to be self-serving, is sort of part of the reason we built Store Connect, is you need a single view of your customer. So this is a simple thing to say and an incredibly hard thing to implement in many cases. One of my favorite questions to ask prospects when I'm talking to them about Store Connect is, how many single sources of truth do you have in your company? It's like, it's everyone. They've got
Question.
and they all sort of go, and then they realize what's happening. And they go, oh yeah, that's not great. I was talking to a charity over in the US just yesterday morning, and they had, an e-commerce platform on Shopify. They had a booking system on Elevate. They had a website on WordPress, and they had another system for their point of sale, right? So they couldn't tell you what I spent at their organization because I was in 4 different systems. That's the first key. If you can get your sales team and your service team and your marketing team looking at your prospects and clients from a single point of view, that is going to send you so far ahead of your competition that are not doing that. Store Connect is an integral part of that because it gets everything into Salesforce and you have that single view. But you can do this to a degree on HubSpot with Shopify or whatever, right? And if you're really just starting out and you're just brand new, have a single spreadsheet in Google Docs or an Excel file that's on a shared drive, like whatever. just start getting that basic understanding of who your customers are and who your prospects are and what they want. You need that single source of truth to really communicate. Otherwise, your sales team don't know what the service team are doing. That there's no, communication. If you are 0 employees, set up a shared email for your support so everyone at least is looking at that. This is can't be understated. One of the pet hates that everyone has, and everyone listening to this has experienced this. You call a company and they don't know who you are. You literally just got off the phone to another part of that company, right? Telephone carriers are notorious for this, and so are so many other organizations. But you don't want to repeat yourself as a customer. And anything in your business that's forcing your customers to repeat themselves is going to lower their expectation of you. So that's my viewpoint. Get your single source of truth in place. Make sure that it's as good as it can be. And then plan your systems that as you're growing, you're going to swap out this and swap out that and bring these together and do that. And if you just keep working on it bit by bit by bit, you'll get there. That's my viewpoint on it.
Gotcha. Couple of questions around this. How many times you get the right answer to that question? And also, which role do you think is responsible for that single customer view?
How many times do I get a what answer to that question? A straight answer.
Straight answer, yes.
Almost every time, because everyone's like, oh yeah, that's actually the problem. Like, it really engages them as a customer for Store Connect. Here I am giving away my secrets on how I get prospects. But every time I see them start iterating through it, and I usually ask it because I actually really need to know, as part of selling Store Connect, on how we're going to roll out, reducing those number of sources of truth, because you need to roll them out in the right sequence. Otherwise, you create more double work, right? And so pretty much every time I get a real answer, and usually they don't actually know. They know about 3 or 4 of them, and then there's another one, and then during the conversation they go, oh yeah, we forgot about the blah, and all this sort of starts coming into the one platform, and we figure it out. But the person responsible for this has to be the CEO. And no one else has got the authority to drive the company in that direction. Because here's a really powerful bit of information that people don't realize. If you have a system that is operating at whatever degree, right, and you start bringing more order or sanity into that system, what's going to blow out of that system and explode in your face are all the confusions that have been trapped in that system and held down, right? The wrong thing to do is, as you're bringing in that order, you see that confusion, you go, oh, I better stop, right? No. Realize that that confusion is the symptom of you bringing that order into that process and fixing it. And that confusion was there regardless of whether or not you're bringing in the order. So it would have blown up in your face at some point in the future. You're just bringing that sort of forward and fixing it. And you'll find this in any activity that you do. You've got a client, something's wrong, it's not going well. You go and approach that as a CEO or as the customer service rep or whatever. You start trying to bring some order in, and all the upset blows up in your face and all this sort of stuff. The right thing to do is keep going down that line. Keep bringing that order in. It'll never go wrong. You just need to keep doing it. Where it will go wrong is if you pull out and pull the parachute cord and try and get out, because now you've not only created or brought to the surface that confusion, but then you've let it fester and you're not doing anything about it. So the CEO is the only person that's going to be able to hold the tiller of the ship, straight through that storm and not swerve off in either direction and go, no, we're getting this done, and to keep pushing through on that. Every one of our clients at Store Connect goes through this. Everyone. It's crazy how predictable it happens in our projects, because we're bringing order to an otherwise chaotic scene. And you get halfway through the project and someone goes, oh, we totally forgot about blah, and now these customers are getting double billed, or whatever. You just have to handle it and navigate through. And it's a challenge in the business, but it produces very loyal clients of ours at the end, because they're able to increase their revenues and profits and increase profitability and efficiencies and all that sort of stuff. But you have to navigate that path, and it has to be the CEO that leads for that.
Great, because those CEOs are the only people that can prioritize it for the entire organization as well. Otherwise,
Yeah.
everyone will be sitting in their BAUs, in their silos, and do what they think is important.
Well, yeah,
Yes,
and
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 I
the other point on that is point solutions. And what I mean by that is like SaaS software built specifically for one thing is always going to do that one thing more efficiently than a generic system, right? However, the generic system is going to do it more efficiently for the whole company for all of those things than 50 point solutions. So when you're bringing this sort of a re-architecture into a company, you need to expect that each fiefdom, like each little region and king of their marketing and the king of sales, they're all going to be a little bit upset, right? Because the end result is not quite as good as what they had. But overall, the whole company is going to elevate, right? So this is something to bear in mind. And the CEO is going to be the only one that's going to have the willpower to see that through.
so you bring in that order and you also bring that clarity at the same time, and you're taking them on a journey, I suppose, because the if the CEOs aren't in control of it, that doesn't mean that they have the answers to all the questions. They
No.
don't even know what questions sometimes to ask. So by you coming in and asking, but why is this and why it was integrated and why
Mhm.
you made a decision of this, I think it just helps to take them on the journey to understand the state of the status quo, I suppose. This is very clever. No wonder you call it a secret.
It's all it is a secret, but like I did a LinkedIn post a little while ago about, the most powerful thing you can do. I think you actually piped up on it, but the most powerful thing you can do is talk to your customers. You got to communicate. You got to get out there and talk. Unfortunately, it's also the hardest thing to do because to whatever degree you need to be vulnerable to accept that incoming communication. You're talking to a client you haven't spoken to in 2 years. How's it going to go? Like, are they about to leave your company? Are they really upset with the service? You have to be willing to have that conversation and be real about it so that you can then take that to the next level. And I've had conversations with clients. I remember one conversation I called the client and literally they picked up the phone and they started screaming at me. That something had gone wrong. I didn't even know about it. I was totally blindsided. My sales rep was sitting across the room and he could hear this person yelling at me on the phone. And the sales rep's like, oh my God, and I had the conversation. And by the end of it, the person put in another $50,000 sale for me and I sent through the invoice. It's like, because I was willing to be there and communicate. It's not that we'd screwed up particularly. It was like a whole factor of things and we were sort of in the middle of it. But having that conversation and being there is like so powerful and really I couldn't recommend it more.
Yeah, we always say in loyalty circles that you can save a customer based on your recovery from their bad experience. It's not necessarily what went wrong or what went right, but how did you handle when it did?
That's right.
And you can turn any negative experience into a positive one if you're willing to show up and listen and tame your ego a little bit. So you not always have to be right all the time.
That's
But
right.
no, brilliant advice. And but also on the flip side, I've seen many times when the head of global CX or the country CX, they start in the new role, they're very excited. They start the roadshow and they start traveling around the country and meeting with all the key account stakeholders. And then the motivation goes out the window and they get settled into all the processes and the systems that were set up before them. And there is zero change, zero from the first roadshow to no one ever hears about them.
Yep.
So I hope they're listening. So
I would also
let's talk
say on
about
that point that you just said, the negative experiences are the larger opportunity to create loyalty.
even better. Totally agree. So why automation isn't about tools, but about timing? What is your take on that?
Not about tools and about timing. Yeah, look, one of the one of the scary things I see that small businesses, especially, not so much in the big end of town, because on the big end of town with those clients, they can sort of afford to make a mistake or two. They've got the cash buffer, they've got the flow, they've got all that sort of stuff. They can fail a 6-month project and it doesn't crash the business. On a smaller business, if you fail on a 6-month project, you might not be in business, right? So there's a lot about timing here. And the reason I said that at just that little bit at the start is that the trap that small businesses run into sometime, and medium as well, is they look at Netflix and they go, well, Netflix did a blog post that they should do A, B, and C. So therefore, that's how I become the same size as Netflix, right? Nothing's further than truth. That is correlation, not causation, right? There are a lot of things that do cause that growth, but that particular enterprise level system is not the thing that created the growth. They're there and they're building that enterprise grade thing because they had the growth. There's a different. So you really have to make sure you think with that as a small business and a medium. And when you're starting to grow like that, and even with larger companies, this also applies. I always, when I'm trying to launch a new project within my company, as much as possible, I try and work out how the thing that I'm launching is going to generate the revenue to pay for the thing I'm launching. And if it can't, how can I do this in a simpler way so that, how can I prove it through timing, through using a simpler tool, even down to a spreadsheet? How can I prove out that this automation is actually going to achieve what we want to achieve before I spend all this money on the tools around it? And this is sort of the approach that I highly recommend for anyone wanting to grow their business. You need a single source of truth. You don't have one. Well, the answer is not. I mean, it might be today, start ripping everything up and moving to Salesforce and Shopify, but Salesforce and Store Connect, sorry, never Shopify. But it is more likely, what part of our business could we bring together as a small step? Because you're going to have to do that small step to do the big one anyway. So how can we implement some small things to generate some more revenue to pay for the automation process, right? If you're trying to launch a loyalty program, don't go spend millions of dollars on or hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on some massive loyalty system to try and automate your loyalty if you don't even have any loyalty to automate. Like, you're much better off.
If you don't know
Yeah, you don't
what your
know,
customers.
right? You don't even know what your clients want. So call your clients and say, we're looking at a loyalty program. What interests you about
Do you
that? You
think
might get back, that is the last thing we want out of you guys. What we'd actually like you to do is answer your phone call when we call you. Okay, well, that's now loyalty, right? So you suddenly find out that loyalty isn't giving your clients reward points on next month's bill. Loyalty to your clients is you answering the phone, right? And that's where the tools and the timing and all that sort of stuff comes into itself. So I'd always be focused on, how do we solve what we can solve with the resources we have right now to make the state better, which then will pay for what we'd want to do in the big picture and really run it out from there.
it's down to that purpose that you brought up before? And I'm such a massive proponent of that. Just you need to identify it early on. Why do you exist? What is it that you want to achieve? And is it a long-term thing for you, or it's a short-term cash solution? Then by all means, go ahead and discount the hell out of your product. And I'm sure it will create millions of dollars in revenue in the short term, but that's about it.
And that's the problem.
So this is very smart. So tell me, there are so many things that I would like to unpack, but that's definitely, it's a podcast scenario, not a Spotlight Friday scenario. Uh, Talk to us a little bit about what small to medium-sized businesses can learn from big brands.
I think this is such a minefield, because one of the traps you can get into is trying to emulate the big brand when you're a small brand. But at the same time, you go, well, they're a big brand. We want to be a big brand. How do we become a big brand? I think probably one of the best things is what you just said then, which is purpose. One of the things you'll notice about very big brands is that they have a very defined definition of who and what they are, for better or worse. We all know Coca-Cola makes drinks. That's what they do. As a company, really, they're probably more of a distribution company, but they make drinks. They stand for that good time in summer, like that's, or Christmas or whatever, right? But that's their brand. Nike have a very defined viewpoint of what they can do. And you'll notice that the really, really big companies have that as a differentiator on their business. And this is probably the most important thing that a small business can work out if they want to increase their sales. It's what's our differentiation? What is it about us that makes us different from everyone else? Because if you're not different, then you're the same. And if you're the same as everyone else, then the only difference can be price. And that is the lowest motivation for any customer when they're purchasing. The highest motivations are around, duty and personal conviction. I believe this is the right thing we need to do, and we're going to do it anyway, despite all the troubles we'll run into. If you're just competing on price, you're not going to be in business for very long. It's just,
Definitely.
that's the way it is. Unless that's your differentiator, right? So you look at companies like IKEA, well, their differentiator is price, right? But that is what they are. So, and they've made a global empire around that. It's good furniture made by yourself at an affordable price, right? But that's the differentiator. They're not just selling cheap furniture; they're selling an experience. Mum or dad gets to build the furniture with the kids, and like it becomes a whole family operation. But yeah, I would find out what your brand is, and if anyone listening is not sure about what to do on that, reach out to, and I'll comment on this afterwards with a link to it, but reach out to David Breyer is on LinkedIn. He's also known as the brand father, and he's all about differentiation. He's written books on it. He's fantastic, and he helps you really figure out what's your difference in the market. And it's I would highly look at that. That would be the thing that I would want to take away from a large business as a small business.
This is a brilliant advice. If you don't mind leaving the link to David in comments
Yeah,
under the
absolutely.
event, that would be amazing. Thank you. Have a couple of questions for you. We've gone over time, but who cares? I'm managing the time, so that's fine. And I have you on the call, and your EA is not calling me yet. No,
No, I'm
neither
fine.
she's texting me.
We
So
can go
I'm
a bit
just going to
longer.
milk it. I'm just going to milk it.
Absolutely.
So, what is your biggest challenge that you've experienced maybe recently, and what have you learned from it?
Oh, what is my biggest challenge experienced? I think, to be honest, as a small business, my biggest challenge over the last 12 months has been funding. I've gone through a whole fundraising round. I've been raising more money. We just recently closed another $4 million US worth of investment and funding. That brings our total to about 13 million US raised or funded over the last year and a bit. It's been a really interesting experience doing that, because unless you're in like the 0.1% of the market, don't try and fundraise your way to profitability. The biggest learning that I've taken out of that is cash is always king. There is no financial problem that can't be solved by making more money. It's like such a simple datum, but it's so true. And this has been a real challenge for us as a business, is like, well, how do you grow and how do you fund that journey? And it's really brought home to me that small to medium businesses, you got to make sure you don't run out of cash. And in all the various markets and things that are happening, that's been a really interesting and sometimes humbling journey, is like, well, how do we actually solve this? How do we get to that point where we're not worried about that anymore? Happily, we're not. We've solved that, and it's taken a lot of work, and we're rapidly growing now. So it was the right thing to do in my case. But for a small to medium business, I would be very, very focused on how can I improve my operational efficiency to make more money out of the same sales, and how can I differentiate ourselves in the market, and how can I talk to my customers to really learn what I can do to better serve them and create that brand loyalty into the future. And if you did those three things, the path to success and profitability is almost guaranteed, because they all feed into one another, right? You improve your efficiency a bit, so you make a little bit more money, and that little bit more money you can invest into building the things that your customers are asking you for, and you're creating that brand loyalty at the same time as differentiating yourself in the market. So people go, oh, they're actually, those three things just become a flywheel. And if you can keep pushing that flywheel and keep pushing it, at some point, the engine will kick in and the thing will start spinning itself. And that is what we're all after as business owners. And, we want the thing to take off. And I highly, highly recommend, if I was I am a small business, they're the three things that I'm focused on. And I think everyone should focus on those things: differentiation, talk with your customers, and improve your efficiency. If you can do those three things, you'll make it.
Incredible. And it's brilliant in its simplicity. So thank you for bringing it all down to earth for all of us and simplifying it. I really appreciate this chat. I do feel that we need to have part two as well. And I'm so grateful for your time, Michael. It's been an incredible conversation.
No worries.
And you know what? My head is buzzing because I will write an article about you and I will tag you. And so just please be ready. But thank you. And also thank you for all the volunteer work that you're doing. I haven't mentioned it, but tell me, can people reach out to you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, Mikel Lindsaar on LinkedIn. You can find me. I'm all over that. I post quite profusely. I'm also on X.
You are very active. I'm so proud of you.
And then also just via getstoreconnect.com is Store Connect, where, as I said, e-commerce, point of sale, and content management system built on Salesforce, a single source of truth. So you can reach out there. There's a little chatbot there, Steve. Steve is our mascot. He's also our
It's
AI
cute.
trainee bot on our website. And you can talk to him there. And there's a button there that says talk to a human. So if you want to talk to a human, press that button. You'll get Genevieve or Sarah or Gavin or myself. And more than happy to talk. But yeah, reach out.
Do you know that I met Steven at Retail Fest? He's very
Nice.
cute.
He's
Yes,
the most traveled Tasmanian devil in the world. So
he is
he's
amazing. He was
fantastic.
very friendly as well. So I was very
He's
impressed.
so
Yes.
cuddly.
Michael, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you very much for everyone who joined us today. We
Indeed.
appreciate you and happy Friday.
Enjoy people.